Many thought it was pretty bold of Ukraine's President Zelensky to even leave his country in the current climate and attend the Munich Security Conference yesterday. But he clearly felt the need to deliver his message face-to-face to world leaders and NATO. I quote, "We will defend our land with or without the support of our partners." He went on to say, Ukraine will not be the buffer between NATO and the Russian army. Well, earlier at the same conference, Boris Johnson had said if Russia invaded Ukraine, it would mean, and I quote, "the destruction of a democratic state, a country that's been free for a generation with a proud history of elections." He then set out in more precise detail than before the sanctions that would befall Russia if they did invade. It would be barred from international capital markets in London, and we would, quote, "open up the matryoshka dolls of certain Russian-owned companies to seek out and sanction their real owners." Now, these warnings were as much aimed at the oligarchs who support and sustain Mr. Putin as the Russian president himself. Might they even, at this late stage, lean on Mr. Putin in defence of their wallets and their vast economic interests? Interesting thought. But in a nutshell, Ukraine, a democratic state, a country that's been free for a generation, as Boris Johnson put it, wants to join NATO. But Russia doesn't want it to. It may yet invade to enforce its will. That, we know, would be answered by anger, condemnation and sanctions. If that's all, Russia would then eye a wider canvas from the Baltics to the old Soviet satellite countries close to its borders. That's not just my fear or fantasy. The Foreign Secretary herself, Liz Truss, says as much in today's Mail on Sunday. And the Sunday Times writes of appeasement, echoing Defence Secretary Ben Wallace's concern about the whiff of Munich, not the security conference that's just finished, but Chamberlain's duping by Hitler in 1938. The journey back to superpower status is clearly Putin's objective. Now, weave in the growing engagement between Russia and China, which Liz Truss also mentions, and a more worrying picture develops. Have we also taken our eye off the ball of the renewed Russia-Chinese friendship? If the West fails to stop a Russian invasion of Ukraine or averts it by accepting Russia's demand that Ukraine rolls back on that hope of joining NATO, then hasn't Putin won? If he has, might that embolden China to move on Taiwan? The stakes globally literally couldn't be much higher.